My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good afternoon, folks. Today I have a great program set out for you. We have a White House photographer. We also have the statement made by Bruce Springsteen, as well as some other stories to play for you today. Now, here's the deal. I won't be here live because, again, I'm out at a graduation of my godson. He's getting his master's, and I must attend. So I will be out there, but I will be monitoring the program. So please go ahead and check in. Go ahead and talk in the chat, talk on Substack. It will all be going, and I'll be checking into it periodically. So folks, enjoy. Again, it's a brand new program for you all to see, everything prepared, the entire 57 minutes and 23 seconds. Let's get started.
Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willis. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willis. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right.
Welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us. Today, we're honored to have Christy Bowe. Christy Bowe is a photojournalist and author. She is currently a member of the White House Press Corps, House and Senate Press Photographers Gallery, White House Correspondents Association, and White House News Photographers Association. She is the author of History in the Making, a focus on 5 U.S. presidents. Her book discusses the human side of the 5 U.S. presidents that she's covered for 30 years as a press corps photographer at the White House. She's covered Biden, Trump, Obama, Bush, and Clinton. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Christy, how are you doing today?
Oh, fine, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, look, we are political junkies here, and anytime we find an insider who can tell us a little tidbits about how things work out there and how your photography worked and what kind of things you inferred from the pictures that you've taken, and who knows, even maybe things you've overheard. Tell me a little bit about, first of all, who you are.
Well, I am a third-generation Washingtonian and been a member of the White House Press Corps for almost 35 years. So, as you mentioned earlier, I've covered five U.S. presidents, and there's been lots of rocking and rolling in between, that period of time. So it's been a fascinating journey. I feel very blessed to have had this as a career.
Now, let me ask you this, because it always intrigues me how you see these photographs come about, right? So how does it work? You said you've been a photographer for 5 presidents. Where are you? When do you go around the pool? Are you always around the press pool? Are you kind of just hanging around the White House and on the plane? What exactly happens?
Well, we get the schedules for the president, and then sometimes they're late in the day, in the evening, which has been recently, that's kind of the case. And sometimes we get the week ahead. That used to be a regular thing. Now that's just starting to come back. So everybody's very grateful for that because that helps you in planning your day. So that will, kind of determine what it is that I do that day, whether it be at the something on Capitol Hill, a hearing there, or the White House, whether the president is doing something. And then typically if an event is, let's say he has something by at 11 a.m., just for making something up here, that if he has something at 11, then we're going to need to get down there. I'm going to need to get down there and bring my gear and stuff on my little ladder and get in position for waiting. So for what's called a preset is those of us that come early, and sometimes that can be an hour or 2 hours early. And then the White House press office will escort us to the venue, whether it be the Rose Garden or the East Room or wherever it is. And then the people who are there for preset, you kind of go in, and behind the velvet ropes, we establish our position by leaving like a ladder or something to mark our spot. And then we go back down to the briefing room and hang out until it's time for what's called the final escort. And then the final escort is anybody who was not there earlier. So they're getting kind of leftover positions. And sometimes that can get a little frisky depending on what the event is and how high profile of an event it is. And then at the final escort, then we get in place, get into your position, and then all the reporters come in, and the TVs are already in there. They preset always. And then, the president sometimes is late. Often, all the presidents that I have covered, all 5 of them are punctually challenged, shall we say, except for President Bush.
Uh-huh.
He was on time, sometimes early. You could set your watch. He was never late. So that's something. And then they come in and do the event, and then we cannot leave until the president leaves the room, of course. And then we go back down, and then we transmit our pictures to our agencies or whoever we're doing work for.
Now, when you do first of all, when you do all of this, is it separated by whether you are doing video or doing stills? Do you have the ability to do both, or are you restricted?
Some people, there's been a crossover with that lately. I personally just do stills.
Right.
On Capitol Hill, that's a big issue, because Capitol Hill, they don't want people doing video unless you are
right.
A network of some kind, or you shouldn't be sitting with the still photographers on Capitol Hill because you're up closer than the people who are further back to be to be doing video.
Of course, it's hard to police that given the type of cameras you have today that can
exactly.
go into video.
And I know my cameras do offer that capability. I use the Nikon Z9 and Z8.
Mm-hmm.
And I have yet to dabble in that, although I've been told, why not? Because that's the thing.
That would be a lot of great videos for social media, especially given how up close you are. And actually, it's our president, it's our vice president, it's our people. It belongs to the people. The reason I'm asking you questions like this is, I think our audience kind of want to know when they see stuff on TV, what's actually happening in the background. So
yes, and people often don't understand that, like what I was just saying to you, that 11 o'clock event, that's fictional 11 o'clock event, that, we're talking by the time you get up there, get downtown, load up all your stuff, wait for the president to leave, then transmit all your stuff, and the thing is over. You're talking, and maybe you have one picture come out of that. That's
right.
What kind of burns us up a little bit, is for people to go, oh yeah, just go down there, and it's just like a quick shot. It is no quick shot.
Never,
it's like borderline 7 hours, 8 hours. Then there's the editing portion of it, depending on who you're shooting for, and it's a lot involved for just one picture that the public may see.
Now, what about when he's out of town or going on the plane? Which photographers and journalists are able to make the plane ride with him to get into the gaggle, etc.?
Well, that would be people that are in the predetermined pool. The White House determines who the pool is going to be. And it used to be the White House Correspondents Association kind of had a big role in that, as you, I'm sure, have heard. Mm-hmm. And then the whole big dust up with the AP and that whole thing. So the seats are designated on Air Force One. And I'm hoping to be able to do that. Actually, I have yet to fly on Air Force One, but I hope to be able to do that.
So right now you're doing the still pictures at the White House or in Washington or
in
maybe
Capitol Hill.
And
Yeah.
if you go to California, would you ever fly to California to take a few shots?
No. See, there you're saying that. Take a few shots. Remember, what does
Right.
that mean? That means
Oh,
big commitment of time.
by the way, by no means am I discounting. I do video, I do all of this, and
Yes.
our process here is going to take quite a bit before the audience actually sees a finished copy of it. So I understand that what you do is very hard and important
And time
work.
consuming and very
And
complex. Yes.
And yeah, so
But, sorry, that's a trigger thing for me.
and it's understood because right here when we're doing a media, people think you just get in front of a camera. Many people, or that you write an article. All our articles are well researched. We've really researched what you're doing, and we want to bring that to the audience as well. Now, you've just written a book, and your book. Tell us a little bit about why you wrote the book.
Well, I think everything has become politics have become so polarized, and everybody is kind of, it's a trigger thing to have talk about politics because you don't know who you're going to set off or whose side people are on. It's very divisive, as you well know. And so I wanted to, for this book, I had written one other book.
And let's get the name of the book. I should have said the name of the book. Oh,
yes. My book is History in the Making. And it's
all right.
On 5 U.S. presidents. And I sent a picture.
I want to do the whole name because it's so important. History in the Making, a focus on 5 U.S. presidents. She tries to discuss the humanity of these presidents that she's covered. Continue, my friend.
Yes. Okay. Because they are very different human beings with very different viewpoints, and most of them get along. I have really been impressed with the camaraderie of most of the former presidents. That I have not photographed President Trump with any of the others, but I've photographed some of the others together. I believe they sent you a few of those pictures.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Of like President Obama, Bush, and Clinton when they came together. And it's kind of rare to have 3 of them together or more. So, but I really get a kick out of watching them and the familiarity that they have with each other, the way they joke, and they're so relaxed because it's like a club that they belong to, that nobody else knows what it's like to be the leader of the free world. So they have a special bond between them. And I thought it was wonderful and was very happy to see that President Biden left a beautiful note for President Trump in the Oval Office in the Resolute desk, which is customary to do, and that President Trump appreciated that and was very positive about that. So I thought I was very pleased about that. But that is one of the things that they do that I'm sure, I don't know if your audience has heard this, but when one president leaves office and another one comes in, the sitting president will leave the incoming president a handwritten note on White House stationery in the desk that wishes them well, basically, and give them any advice. So that's kind of a cool thing. So I talk in my book about little behind the scenes things like that. And then also about, although that they politically, obviously, and in other ways are very different people, the one thing that every one of them has had in common is that they are close with their families. Appreciate their families, and their families mean a lot to them.
Now, what in all these?
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't answer your question of why did I write this book? Because I wanted to show the human side and the personal side of these human beings that are in the Oval Office. Because I think we kind of lose sight when there was so much fighting going on during the different elections that we forget that, hey, these are human beings.
So I imagine after you put your stairs to hold your position where you're going to take your pictures, your eyes are always roaming, your ears are always open to see what's going on in your surroundings. During any particular crisis for any particular president, which one did you find the most jarring?
Jarring of any of the
of any of the 5 presidents? I know that there are times when there is some event that has occurred that has national and probably international implications that you were there to photograph and you saw all the machinations behind it. What event would that have been in your opinion?
Well, I would have to say two different ones come to mind. September 11th.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly. I was not there at the Pentagon, but I was there for the aftermath of that. And as all the world leaders came into, which was quite touching, that not all of them, but a significant amount of world leaders came to the Oval Office to express their condolences about the horrible thing that happened to the United States. And that was really quite special and touching. And then just to see how everybody was gathering together to kind of unite, which I think the whole nation, not just the White House, everybody was very united after that and kind of coming together to try to, help each other as much as we could. So that was one incident. And the other incident was on January 6th. I was at the Capitol that day. So that was a very boots on the ground kind of situation for me.
So you're actually on the grounds of the Capitol when that occurred?
Yes.
And what was your vantage point?
I was on the east side of the Capitol.
Okay. And so
I was outside. I was not inside the Capitol. I was outside.
And did you get a whole lot of stills out of that, or?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, well,
those are in both this book, History in the Making. There's a few pictures of that in there, and I tell the story of that a little bit. And then also that's in my other book, Eyes That Speak: One Woman's Photographer's Journey with History Makers.
What story of January 6th most impacted you? Something, let's say that you saw, that you pictured, and even maybe had an interaction with.
Well, I was kind of surprised that the way things kind of picked up, because the folks that were there at first were very friendly and nice, and there was no trouble whatsoever. It was kind of later in the day where things picked up, and some of the people who were like, some of the ones I spoke with were from the Midwest, older people, and they kind of got caught up in everything. So I think, not everybody there was violent. That's for sure. But the ones that were, as things escalated, photographers had their one of them in particular had their camera smashed. Another TV camera was lit on fire. There was a lot of things that were not really reported, that not to mention the violence with the police officers there. And I covered that too with the January 6th hearings, and it was like 140 some of them were injured, seriously injured. And
you're talking about police officers and journalists, yeah.
Yes, but mainly police officers that were really, really injured badly, and that kind of went away. So that was kind of.
So wait, let me see that. You just kind of opened my eyes here. Are you telling me that the injuries to police officers, for all practical purposes, went underreported?
I think it was underreported, yes. And the January 6th committee brought that to view more, but they were using body cam footage of the actual thing. So it's not like somebody was exaggerating. They had the actual body cam footage of these people that were being injured and beaten. So that it was a lot more than a big deal. I know that for a while there, it was disturbing to see people saying, some of the same people that were hiding inside the Capitol, Congress people that were hiding and being escorted out and were like terrified, were like, well, it really wasn't that big a deal. It was a big deal. And that should not be forgotten. So
were you scared while you were out there?
I was trying to focus on what I was doing. I was not fearful for my life, but there was an encounter with myself and one of the groups there where they were yelling at me. And I was very aware of the fact that typically when I go onto the Capitol grounds, I don't even think for my safety or anything else, because I know there's so much security around and everything else that you don't worry about watching your back. And that was definitely not the case. that day. So that was kind of jarring to know that you weren't, the situation had shifted so much that it was like every man for themselves.
Did you pretty much clarify that in your first book about how likely the police officer injury and attacks were probably greater than what was played on mainstream media?
That was not as much the case because I had not, at that point, when my first book came out, I had not covered the January 6th hearings yet.
Okay, got it.
So that, so I give lectures now to different organizations to talk about that. I have pictures set to music that show images that are in my book and of the 5 different presidents. And then also I have another entire video about January 6th.
Well, so I tell you what, because we're getting close on time, let's do this. You took care of 5, you photographed 5 presidents. Yes. In order, the first would be Clinton, the oldest yes. one, Clinton. Tell me something about photographing Clinton, then tell me something about photographing Bush, okay. Then Obama, then Trump, then Biden.
Okay. President Clinton was a very wonderful person to photograph, very charismatic, just like people say. When he would speak to you, you'd be the only person in the room type of thing, even if there was a crowd in there. He had that gift that some people have. A lot of people don't. So during the turbulence with the Monica Lewinsky incident, things were a little more tense with us. We had wonderful access with the Clintons, fabulous access. He had regular planned press conferences that everybody knew way in advance. We had the week ahead schedule. You could pretty much, with the exception of once in a while with schedule changes, you pretty much could plan your week a week in advance, which was fabulous. So, and they even had for us a picnic where we came out onto the South Lawn and there was Ferris wheels and all kinds of stuff with a big cookout that was like a big surprise for the press. And then they walked around with their Secret Service detail, of course, but they walked around freely among us. And it was just really gracious, wonderful way to know that we're appreciated. So they had a great, and Christmas parties we would go to with them. And it was just very inclusive. Even when the Monica Lewinsky incident happened, things got a little strained, but but the Clintons, both of them still had respect for the media, that we were doing our job, they were doing theirs, and everybody stayed in their lane and kept moving forward. That was very special that they were able to do that. And then Hillary, I've covered over the years as well. She too has been fabulous to work with. Very, very gracious and accommodating. Bush, I really got a kick out of President Bush 43. He, the one that was always on time, he had a wonderful personality. So if I had to say attribute to each of the presidents, or characteristic, of each of the presidents, I'd say Clinton was very charismatic, would be the word for him. Bush, the word I would use for him is genuine. What you saw is what you got. And I would, when you're in the Oval Office, we have a very short period of time to take pictures, or we did. President Trump has changed that a bit, which is nice. And Trump is now much better accessible than he used to be in the first term. But anyway, Bush you're not allowed to speak with the president if you're a photographer in the Oval Office unless he speaks with you first. And like I said, we would have like 15 seconds, 10 seconds to make a picture going in there. So you had to know what your lighting was. You had to know what you wanted, and then have time to look around, see who else was in there, and get your shot. So I learned the value of how much a couple of seconds is. I can really. And
preparation.
Yes, because you got to know what your settings need to be. So anyway,
Obama.
and Bush and I would kid around quite a bit. And that was really wonderful to be able to have a president kid around with you. I mean, that was great. We'd have little one-liners. So that was really special. And then Obama, I would have to say very much of a wonderful comedic sense of timing he would have. He could have his own TV show. He was very good with that. And he's obviously a good speaker and a wonderful family man. I appreciated how his family had, when I have pictures in the book of him with Sasha and Malia walking off of Marine One, holding hands and having genuine conversations. They kind of acquired the skill of not paying attention to there being photographers around. I guess there was, because they had Secret Service all the time. They just got used to there being other people around. And so, we photographers in the press corps have historically been very respectful about the children of the presidents and not being too invasive and anything like that. But that is what comes to mind with Obama. And then President Biden, I would have to say what comes to mind with him is a lifelong public servant. Certainly, he spent his whole life, even with personal tragedies happening to him, he continued to serve the nation. And
was he very accessible?
No.
Okay.
No, not to me. I was not in the Oval Office one time during his entire 4 years.
Wow.
So that's awful.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he was very much not accessible to me and people. Just a few photographers had good access with him, and then there was like no real press conferences to speak of either.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think I really respected his commitment to his family and his closeness with them. Then and then with President Trump, certainly what comes to mind for him is spontaneous is the word that comes with him, because he is really interesting that way, that he does things with the press. Sometimes I get his schedule, I guess, usually 11 o'clock at night, and then for the next day, and then he changes things up quite a bit so that he may be having one thing and then change it and opening it up and letting press come in to cover him.
And you did him in his first 4 years,
yes.
And you're doing him now.
Yes, and I take back what I said about the access not being as good for him in his first term, because he kind of really, I got to say, I was impressed in the way that he turned things around in his first term for not having press conferences. Obama had regular ones, Clinton had regular ones, Bush had regular ones, but Trump did not have press conferences. So, and that's kind of gone away, actually, a regular traditional press conference that's planned where, people can get their questions and plan ahead. That doesn't exist anymore. So with him, that was the beginning of that turn of events. And then what he did is, rather than, because I was in the room with him when he and Jim Acosta kind of got into it
right
that time. And it really was not a good situation. So all the way around. So what he ended up doing instead was changing things. So instead of being trapped in a room full of journalists for an hour, answering questions and being held accountable with your feet to the fire, he changed things where he would come out and on his way to Marine One, coming out of the Oval Office, he would stop and take questions. So what used to be like, I don't know, 15, 20 people would be there for his arrivals or departures from the helicopter Marine One on the South Lawn. That got to be a big event where there'd be like 100 people or more.
Right.
And that people would be all lined up and he would take questions. Now, we were standing, so sometimes he'd come out of the diplomatic room there by the Truman balcony or from the Oval Office. But as he would come out, everybody would hustle to get, in position. And then there's a hierarchy of who gets where, because cameras have to be in the TVs and everything else. So everybody has to kind of hustle and be there. And then he could come over and actually talk with people everybody would get questions and everybody was delighted. He could talk to you for a half hour.
Right.
Now, the bad part is that Marine One is not too far away with the
And
engine.
it's loud. Yeah.
There's that and the exhaust of
Right.
that. But so that we're breathing all that. But then if he didn't, this is my personal opinion, that if there's a question that he didn't want to answer or that he might not know the answer to, he's certainly not expected to know everything, and none of them are. But then he could say, "Oh, can't hear you," or "Gotta go." So he would determine how long he was there.
Mm-hmm. If things are going great for him, it's great. If not, bye-bye. Yeah. Well, look, let me just tell you, Christy, I find it intriguing being able to go out there and do all these things, and that you've written a book that sort of bring your experience into so that people can kind of have a feeling of what happens behind the scene when they see this stuff in the Washington Post or they see it on TV, etc. The amount of work that you guys have going behind there. So why don't you, in closing, give us the name of your book, where you can get your book as well, and give us a one-line closer or something.
Sure. Okay. All right. So my book is called History in the Making, a focus on 5 U.S. presidents, and it's available on Amazon, at Barnes and Nobles. If you're local in the Washington area, it's at Politics and Prose also. And I would like to say in closing that everybody needs to just keep in mind that we're all in this together, and that not to lose sight of the fact that our presidents are also we got to think of them more as our next door neighbor, and that they're human too, and that they can make mistakes or not, but there needs to be respect on both ends. The media needs to be respected, and so does the presidency.
Christy Bowe, a photojournalist and author at the White House. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you so much for having me.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.
When you're fighting a fascist, when you're fighting an evil dictator, when you're fighting somebody who doesn't want what's best for your country, you have to get out there and be bold wherever you are, whatever you're doing. And there are many people that are doing that. The protests, the constitutional protests are occurring throughout the country every single day, even though most of the media isn't covering it as they should, because again, many of them fear the wrath of the Führer. But we have to push on. Most of us that have the platforms should push on and do it. That's why it was so great to see one of my idols out there in Manchester, England, on the first leg of his tour, really pointed out to the rest of the world what America is living through right now, but not doing it in a manner of desperation, but doing it in a manner that says, we, the American people, are fighting to redeem ourselves. I want you to listen to Bruce Springsteen, what he had to say in Manchester, England. Then we'll take it on the other side.
Last night in Manchester, England's industrial city, Bruce Springsteen began a new tour called the Land of Hope and Dreams Tour. Between songs, Bruce Springsteen told his British audience what was happening here on the other side of the Atlantic.
I don't think it could have been nailed any better than the way Bruce Springsteen just did it. And again, if we just take umbrage to those words, and move on and make sure to stay engaged and not ever give in to fear, not ever give in to the extortion, not ever give in to the coercion, and simply engage and let those who are currently in power understand that that is just temporary. The power still belongs to the people, and we must take it. With every passing day, Donald Trump is acting more like a despot, more like what we know he's always been. Now we're talking about June 14th. It seems like there's going to be a parade for supposedly for the 250th anniversary of the birthday of the Army. But of course, we know it's really the birthday of Donald Trump, and he's always wanted a military parade, and it seems like he's going to get one. So we'll go ahead and have tanks and big trucks rolling through the streets of D.C., and they're going to tear up the streets, even as one general says, maybe not all that bad. Whatever the case is, it's going to cost money. So here we got something that's going to cost us over $45 million to have a parade for the president as we cut veterans administrations, as we cut Medicaid, as we cut a lot of social services. But we have big banners around Washington, D.C. to really say, to the president, to the president. And now we have a $400 million airplane, 747, that was given to the president that he now wants us to turn into Air Force One so that later on he can take the plane into the Trump library and fly it whenever he wants to fly. Folks, don't you get the grift? And it's not just the grift. He wants us to pay for his grift. Check this little report out, and then we'll take it on the other side.
Tim, this parade, as we've said, could cost up to $45 million at a very uncertain time in the economy. This, when the president has suggested, look, Americans buy few kids' dolls, fewer pencils. What message does it send, though, that it's okay for him to have a birthday celebration of this magnitude, but kids should cut down on the number of dolls they get?
Yeah, well, that's not a great message. I don't think if it's getting through to folks, Alex, I think that's part of the question, is if we live in these different bubbles of information. To me, just like on the merits of it, the amount of money that you're spending on this, when you're talking about the firing of federal government workers, you're talking about the firing of employees at DOD, across the military. And we're doing it simultaneously. We're having this big debate on the Hill that you guys have been covering, where the Republicans are trying to pass a bill that will increase the debt, by $6+ trillion. So together it is just incoherent, right? It's like we don't have enough money to pay for people that work at the VA. We need to cut some of our VA employees. And yet we do have enough money to throw a birthday party for the president where he gets to look at his shiny toys. And we do have enough money to cut taxes for the richest people in the country, and in a way that does not balance the budget, in a way that balloons the debt. It's like taken together, I think it's a pretty offensive policy program. It's just a question of whether, folks will interpret it like that.
General, this $45 million price tag, it does not include the cleanup or the expected repairs from damage to Washington's roads from the heavy tank traffic. Now, you just said previously that you don't think they will do any damage. I'm going to beg to differ, just because of numerous people with whom I've spoken said it will cause some damage. Now, I'm not saying you're wrong, but give me a sense of the damage that can be caused by a tank on just the general asphalt roads, and what could be left behind.
Well, look, I spent much of my life in tank mech units. We have Reforger all over Europe and ran tanks down every street, cobblestone street in Europe. By and large, a tank, unless it turns sharply to the left or right, has a lower ground footprint on it than a 5-ton truck. So they're going to bring those vehicles in on tank transporters called HETs. They're going to try and not have them do pivot steer and go left or right. If they do some damage at turning points, they'll have to repair it. But I think that's a wrong argument. I think the right argument, the one that Tim makes, To look at it in a political sense, it just makes no sense. It's not part of the American culture. This isn't Bastille Day. We normally don't run heavy equipment in parades. By the way, the New York City parade after Desert Storm was 24,000 troops. So this is not a significant event, except that it's a politically boneheaded move to hijack an event for the 250th birthday of our proud U.S. Army and have it enhance the president's birthday, which sounds creepy to most of us.
Yeah. Do you think that message will get through, Tim? You suggested it's not getting through necessarily yet, but do you think it will? I mean, you think he might say something right around June 14th, don't you?
Yeah, sure. I mean, and combine it with other stuff, and that's the thing. It's always compounding with Trump, and it's everything about politics. Look, you're getting this free plane from the Qataris that costs $400 million that we're going to have to now. The taxpayers have to pay for making fancier for him. You have this big, I don't know if you've seen this big banner of Trump's face outside of the U.S. Department of Agriculture that looks like it's a third world despot, like where you kind of land in a third world country, and you have the Caudillo's face is up on all the government buildings. Right. So I think if you combine all these things together, it is creepy. There are going to be MAGA people that like it, but I do think that some folks are going to be turned off by this because it's not our culture, as the generals pointed out.
First, there are lies that DOGE went ahead and somehow saved, found fraud in Social Security. Well, the actual data is out. Let's talk about it.
It's time for a quick progress report on one of Donald Trump and his best buddy Elon Musk's favorite pet projects. That is uncovering supposed fraud in Social Security, especially when it comes to their phone lines. I mean, remember Musk claims 40% of all calls into Social Security are made by fraudsters. 40%. That's what he claims. And so last month, the Social Security Administration set out to catch all these fraudsters and installed anti-fraud checks for all claims made over the phone. And guess what? The results are in. Since then, they've received over 110,000 calls, and their fancy new fraud-catching software found, drumroll please, two. That's right. According to an internal document obtained by NextGov, under the new policy, the agency found that only 2 benefit claims out of over 110,000 had a high probability of being fraudulent, and they aren't guaranteed to be so. If my math's correct, that totals to 0.0018%, not exactly 40%, but who's counting? Well, we are. That's why we had to share this. And even better, they managed to slow down retirement claim processing by 25% along the way, leading to, quote, a degradation of public service. Great job, team. Helpful and efficient as usual.
In other words, yet another fraud. DOGE was a failure. They claimed they were going to save $2 trillion. Then they reduced it to $1 trillion. They claimed they saved $100 billion. No one can find the $150 billion that they saved. Yet they went ahead and caused a whole lot of chaos by firing and then having to hire again and firing folks. Made absolutely no sense. But the one thing they were successful on is stealing all of your data. Pundit from Bulwark, and I think he nails it. In Donald Trump, in less than 100 days, has taken away the stature that we had in the world. After his first term, our stature fell dramatically. But by the same token, people thought that, well, everybody is due a mulligan. It's okay that a country could elect somebody by mistake. And after all, it's not that they really elected Donald Trump, because the first time around, Donald Trump didn't win the election. He won the Electoral College, which is an anarchism that is really kind of crazy. And other democracies around the world just don't get it, like I don't get it as well, that it is a very undemocratic way of electing a president. But hey, that's what you got. It was an accident that Donald Trump got elected, okay? But the second time around, he won the plurality with the popular vote. He didn't win the maximum amount of vote. He didn't win the majority of the American vote, but he won the plurality of the American votes. At that point, the rest of the world said, we can't look at that as an accident. That is America. That is America. And if that is America, if not enough people in America are ready to lead as they were before, just maybe we have to do otherwise. And I want you to listen to this pundit because I think he nailed it.
Then a lot of Trump supporters did back him on these tariffs because they want manufacturing to return to America. So what is he saying to them today?
I don't know. Like, he'll tell them like the same stuff he did when he told them that he built the wall and they all believed him. Right. I mean, this is what it's nice to have a cult, right? When you can just have a cult and you tell people stuff and they believe it. You know, I'm a little bugged here because the damage is done. I mean, you said at the top of the show, we're on day 113. There's more than 1,000 days of this left. I mean, just imagine how much more damage can be done. And, you know, when you said what is the big takeaway from this? The big takeaway, I think, is that the American-led world order is over. And I don't think that goes back together again, right? The rest of the world has to move on. The rest of the world has to make plans and arrangements. They have to make financial plans and trade arrangements. They have to make security plans and security arrangements. And the old thing that we all grew up with, where the America led the world order, I think that's done.
You wrote about that today. You wrote that even beyond economically, when it comes to defense and other areas, since Trump launched this in the last 6 weeks, countries are moving on without us. Just explain that in more detail, please.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this with the Canadian election, which was really done on the question of, is the Canadian partnership with America finished or not? And Canadians voted yes. The Chinese stood up and, you know, as Charlotte said, the Chinese realized, we have all the leverage over the U.S. right now, and the U.S. backed down from them. Last week, the new German chancellor was sworn in. The very next day, he went to Paris, met with Emmanuel Macron, and they announced that they're going to stand up a new defense council, security council between just the two of them. That really, I mean, there's no way to read that except as we no longer have any faith in NATO. And they even talked about extending the French security nuclear umbrella for the rest of Europe. Like, this is, again, I think in America, we've talked ourselves into believing that, like, the Trump thing happened and it's really bad and unfortunate. But, you know, if we can just get through this, then in 4 years, we can course correct and put things back together again. But that's not how the world works, right? The rest of the world keeps spinning, and we've gone this way and into this cul-de-sac and just sort of abdicated America's responsibility for leadership in the world. And once you do that, like, it takes a generation to fix it, I think. And that's if you're lucky.
I am so glad that he said what he said, that it takes a generation to fix it, because I used that on another program. I think it was on WBAI or one of these other stations. And no, it wasn't WBAI. It was another one. And I got some pushback because there are really people who think that when we rid ourselves of Donald Trump, everything is going to be okay. To which I pointed out, no, everything is not going to be okay, because this cancer isn't Donald Trump. Donald Trump is just a representation of this cancer. That's it. Donald Trump represents a cancer that is endemic within our country. And what we have to do is find the antidote. And that antidote isn't, even if we get 3 more Democrats that win the presidency, which is very likely after Donald Trump. It will take people forgetting that America was capable of electing a Donald Trump. And that will take a generation, because the people who lived through it around the world, the destructive nature of this guy, the people who live it around the world, they are going to say, we can't trust them. Okay, they did it this time. We can't trust them. That is where Donald Trump and those who have elected Donald Trump have put our country. It is always important that you read between the lines, especially when you have a disingenuous line administration like Donald Trump's administration. I mentioned several times before that the purpose of these tariffs were to simply transfer your monies to the wealthy in a big tax cut. And, you know, people would sort of disregard that. After all, he's negotiating for tariffs, etc. But remember, he may be negotiating for tariffs, but he has kept a baseline tariff of 10% on just about every country or above in the case of China, which is now 30%, and certain parts of Canada, certain products from Canada and Mexico at 25%, and other different ranges elsewhere. So he is attempting to raise money with the tariffs. Has nothing to do with overseas offshoring or anything like that, because he has not instituted any policies to really try to repatriate companies over here other than with tariffs. After all, I gave the example that said, even if we wanted to build factories here, we wanted to bring back making T-shirts, etc. over here, we don't have the equipment to make that, which means we'll have to import the equipment to make that. So it's all a fraud. What I always said is that Donald Trump's intent is to use tariffs to transfer the money of the people who pay the tariffs, you, the working class, the middle class, to the rich with that huge tax cut. And by the way, today he also came out with a purported drug deal where he gets to cut the prices that Medicare and Medicaid pay for drugs. Well, again, it is important for you to understand that. Remember, they're trying to get $880 billion out of Medicaid. And one of the tricks that they're going to use, in as much other than the cuts that they've already advertised that they're going to do, is to simulate a bigger cut by saying they will be paying less for drugs, even though that's not guaranteed. But you know what? It's out of the box, because he never would say specifically that he wanted all these tariffs and drug cuts to make the budget works. In other words, all these savings weren't going to go to the average American citizen, but actually go to the wealthy. But you know what? He slipped. Today, when he announced the drug deal, he slipped. And for those who understand, those who can infer, you'll see exactly what he said.
I just called the Speaker of the House, and I just called the leader, our leader in the Senate, John Thune, Mike Johnson. Spoke to both of them. I said, when you score, you're going to have to score two things. You're going to have to, number one, score that hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff money is coming in. But even bigger than that, you're going to have to score that your cost for Medicaid and Medicare and just basically pharmaceuticals and drugs is going down at a level that nobody has ever seen before. It'll pay for the Golden Dome. I see the Golden Dome is there, see? That'll easily pay for the Golden Dome. And we'll have a lot of money left over. We need the Golden Dome, by the way, in this world.
Notice what he said. He called up the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader. And what did he say? When you're scoring the budget, when you're scoring the new budget, you have to think about what we have in tariffs and what we have in the savings from this executive order to reduce the price of drugs. Let's be clear. Neither the price of drugs reduction is a certainty, or the money's that's coming from the tariffs are a certainty. It's not, because for several reasons. Again, he's quote unquote negotiating these tariffs. If he negotiates these tariffs away or very much lower, then the scoring from the CBO will make no sense. That is what Trump wants to do. He wants to hold back everything under the perception that he's going to get drug costs down, under the perception that he's going to be able to keep tariffs high, and while tariffs are high, that somehow we are going to still buy these products, which means he'll continue to sock it to the working class to pay these tariffs. But none of that is sure, and there's a more likelihood that, politically speaking, after the CBO rates his budget, that he will go, after it's rated and the bill is passed, that he'll go ahead and acquiesce to the will of the working class for political reasons and say, okay, I dropped the tariffs. But by then, the bill is already passed, and you'd either have to go into further deficit spending, or further cutting. And given for the way he really, really cares about the working class, which means he doesn't care, you will pay the bill, your hospitals will close, and these bad things will continue to happen. Folks, remember, you are being warned, so you likely should be contacting your congressperson. But again, you've been warned, and if you don't do something about it, well, so shall you sow, so shall you reap.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.